Hey, I'm Bradley Denniston, and we are back with Behind the Song, Stolen Love. And today I'm going to be showing you the bass parts, the plugins, the compression, the EQs, all the stuff I did to make that bass really rock and be funky as hell. Also, I'm going to show you the synths, the analog synths, the Prophet 6, all the cool stuff I put on there myself here at the studio. And we're going to get into it. I'm going to show you all the plugins, the routing, everything. Let's go. All right, so I'm not going to bore you with the story behind this bass part, but basically I wrote the bass line in MIDI when I first had the demo together, and I was like, yo, something's missing, right? Like, MIDI bass is cool, but I play bass, I'm not that good at it, so I was like, yo, I need to get a real bass player involved. So I hit up Will, who works with me, he's from Brazil, and I said, yo, who do you got? And this dude, this like really old school cat from Brazil, got a bunch of classic, you know, Fenders and 65 Yamahas and stuff. Really dope bass player named Dudina, I believe, is on IG. I was like, yeah, let's get him going. And then he hit me with like 5 different takes, and I comped together this. So I'm going to show you guys exactly what we ended up with. Let me just play from the verse, show you what the final sounds like, and then I'll show you the MIDI bass, and I'll show you where it started.
You played with my heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty, baby, where have you been? Pouring all the same shots, baby, again. Feels like it's over, it's over. Maybe I should stay, maybe things will change. Maybe I will find a way to just get over it.
All right, so that's the bass part. First off, this is the live bass, and I even just called it Live Bass Take 1 Brazil, and just duplicated it because I had different takes and I was comping stuff together and trying to treat these a little bit differently because the takes sounded a little different to me. I'll get into the plugins and stuff, but I also wanted to just show you kind of the MIDI bass that I started with and that I sent to him, and then just kind of show you what he did with it, which I thought was really cool. He made it much more like groovy on the floor in the pocket. I was like really going pretty melodic with it. And I usually like a lot, like when I'm like mocking up bass parts or playing MIDI bass, I really, really like the Rickenbacker bass in Contact. It's the Scarby Rickenbacker bass. It's just really dope. I use the palm muted a lot of the times. I don't know why. I just find myself reaching for that. I think it's like, cause it's so like just, you know, like you could play fast bass lines, and especially for funk stuff, like it's just such a good bass. Here we go. So this is the bass. I'm going to turn on the stuff that was on it. This was the MIDI bass. I'm going to mute the other bass here and just kind of show you guys the MIDI bass line that I had.
You played with my heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty, baby, where have you been? Pouring all the same shots, baby, again. Feels like it's over, it's over. Stolen love, it's stolen love.
So it's not a bad bass part. It's not a bad bass part. It's just, it's like really melodic and it's walking a lot. And I feel like when he played the bass on it, it just kind of made it more pocketed, made it more funky and groovy. And yeah, it just worked out really cool. I really, really liked what he did here. So this is the bass. I'll show you some of the plugins I used on it. 1176 is going to be like, you know, classic bass compression. This is the anniversary edition from UAD, so it has the 2-to-1, which I really like just to like get the bass starting to stay still, I guess, if you can, for lack of a better term. I'll show you how much I'm compressing here.
You played with my heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty, baby, where have you been? You played with my heart, I gave it again. You played with my
Like one thing the 1176 does really well is it just kind of like beefs out and brings up that low level information. And I always find it's just so good on bass because it makes the bass like more like girthy, you know, and a little more demanding, fills out more space. But 2-to-1 just kind of gives it so it's just kind of jamming because it's popping. And something that to keep in mind always when you're setting, I mean, at least in my world, like I like the bass to let the attack come through, but I like to release really quick when it's doing like, you know, it's like funky, but it's also like it's dependent on ghost notes and stuff. So you have to really have a really quick release. Too slow of a release and you're just going to be choking that bass line out. So there's that. And then the Devil Lock, one of my favorite plugins, of course. I mean, who doesn't love this plugin by Sound Toys? Who doesn't love Sound Toys, right? Sound Toys makes awesome stuff. They make incredible shit. Crunch, crush, darkness, mix. You can see it's just barely touching it. I'm at 1, but I'll show this to you and just kind of bypass it in and out. Putting some stank on the bass, right? And it's more apparent in the mix. Let's play it in the mix and bypass it in and out.
You played with my heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty, baby, where have you been? Pouring all the same shots, baby, again. Feels like
just shows a little bit more of that pick, shows a little bit more of the string attack, which I really love. And you can see like Crush, I have it like barely up at like 3 something. Crunch might only be at like nothing, maybe just like it's just barely touching. Darkness, just tiny bit up, really fast on the release. Obviously, that's something I love. And then the mix is at 1, right? So I'm just giving it a little vibe there. That's all it's doing. And then the Pro Q3, you're going to find this in every single damn record I work on right now, no matter what. I don't know who doesn't use the Pro Q3. It's incredible for workflow. It's one of my favorite EQs. I just absolutely love it. It's so fast and it's just musical and it gets rid of stuff like a GML does, you know? So looks like I'm doing a little like dB 1.4 at 1470, taking out a little 237. I always find that I want to like save some voltage at 237, that area. Like 200 to 400, like I always want to save voltage there because I feel like you start getting drums, bass, the vocals there, any synths, like everything starts to eat up that area like crazy. And then 147, I'm ducking that out as well, and then sweeping out. So 147, I typically will take that out of a bass because the kick drum like needs that space. I want it to be a punchy kick drum. So I'll just bypass this in and out and show you what that's doing.
you played with my heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty, baby, where have you been? Pouring all the same shots, baby, again.
So very basic. It's just cleaning up more space for the vocal. It was really important to me to make a lot of space for the vocal and have the vocal really on top of the record. I just feel like that was more of a modern approach in my head. Like I wanted the vocal to be like front and center and important, and you to be like, wow, even if I'm not the best singer in the world, I still felt like it's part of the record. It's like the story being told. It's kind of a personal story, but it's also kind of open for interpretation. So that's kind of what I wanted. Really highly compressed in-your-face vocal that took up a lot of space. And if you start letting the bass take that space, then, you know, you lose that. So then I followed it up with 1176, and let's just see what this is doing. It's probably just catching overs, kind of starting to level things out.
You played with my heart.
Yeah, so it's really important for me with bass guitars that the bass always is just like right there, and it's not going like it's not going up and down, right, in volume or anything like that. The bass for me, especially like in a funk record, pop record, it's got to be in your face. It's got to stay still. All right, so let's talk about the bus, right? Because I bust these both to this bus 13, and it looks like I'm doing the same thing. I'm just pushing a little bit of that mid-range poke to make sure that you're hearing it. Your ear can find that bass. 136 is tucked back. 62 is tucked back. We're rolling off around 22. So we still have a lot of sub in the bass. And then one of my favorites, API 2500. Just great for glue. I bet this is just barely touching. Let's see.
You played with my heart, I gave it
Okay, yeah, so it's just barely moving the needle. It's just for glue. It's to keep the basses together, hold them together. And then I have the inflator, which is going to give you probably like what I was doing here is just pushing the mid-range a little bit more to make it sound more like a funk bass, you know, like stringy, attacky, and not so much just like a like subby bass, but more of like a, you know, like when you hear like slap bass and shit, you always hear the strings and you hear the mid-range and the poke and stuff. So this is probably doing a lot. I mean, I'll bring this in and out so you can hear it on the bass. Let's go to a different part too, just so we can hear, you know, a different part. Why not mix it up, right?
Calm down for the afternoon. She's giving that attitude. Stolen love. It's stolen love. Keep pulling it.
Hopefully you heard like what it's doing. It's basically just pushing the bass forward so that the bass isn't getting lost when things get busy. And I really love the Oxford Inflator for that. A lot of people jack this effect up like crazy. They get super wild with it and everything sounds overprocessed. I rarely go over 50% on the effect on this. And then the curve is to give it a little bit more roundness and fatness. And that's about it for the bass. I mean, the bass was very, you know, you get a great player. It sounds like he had recorded it through like an octave pedal, like an octavator or something. Like if you hear it, especially in the chorus, like let's just play this soloed so you can really hear the tone of the bass. So I love that he did that because that's like so funk, and it also kind of has like a synth bass kind of feel to it, and it makes it a little more modern. You know, it has like a little you know wink to the 80s, you know 90s kind of vibes, even late 70s kind of vibes. But it's just super dope. Like I really like what he did with that. So let's get into the synths. Let me show you some synths and show you kind of what those are doing. I basically used synths in this to sort of give it a little bit of a classic, you know, synth pop kind of vibe to it that is like an undertone throughout the whole record, which I don't think a lot of people really realize how many synths are in here. But I'll just play them for you. Like a lot of these are from the Prophet 6. Some might be from, you know, Serum, it looks like. And yeah, just mainly Prophet though. I think Prophet 6 was really what I was rocking on this. So I'll show you the strings here and what they're doing.
Calm down, but baby, for now, go on, don't waste it.
So just a little counter, you know, give you a little vibe. It's kind of like what a guitar would be doing, like a funk guitar or something. I just wanted to use a synth instead. I thought that would be cool. And then here's Serum synth chords. Let's hear what this is doing. Okay, so this is really just like holding this like kind of dark feel together, which I didn't want the record to feel too happy and not like too sad either. Like I think a lot of the times like trying to find that balance between minor major kind of vibes makes a record kind of sound cool, you know? Like that's basically what I'm doing with this, the synth chords, and that's what that sounds like soloed out.
You played with my
You know, it's just a layer, and if you take it out, you miss it. You know what I mean? It fills out things. But also, like, I think I put like a gate on it or some sort of pumper plug-in. You know, I'm sure it was like Cable Guys or you know, AIR bundle or something like that. And then I have this bell lead. I thought this was really cool. There's just like little spices of synths everywhere. So, you know, I'm not trying to overdo synths. It's not like a synth record. It should be kind of a hybrid of everything is what I was feeling. So I'm going to solo this and let you hear this. Yeah, so this was definitely the Prophet. And something about this, like just playing one time throughout the whole record really like made something special for me. because you only hear it one time when it's kind of countering this melody on the vocal.
Wandered in all alone, looking down at your phone, make him wait outside for the first time. He's down to go, you.
Super simple, super basic, but it's something that kind of goes, oh, I haven't heard that yet, right? And then I have a bell lead here. This is probably very similar to what that's doing. Let's check it out. And you can see I bounced a lot of these in place. I think a lot of times when I'm like doing synths, like I'll do stuff, I'll like put processing on it, I'll run it through stuff, I'll mess with the tone, and then I'm like, yo, I gotta print this right now because I don't want to lose this sound. And I like to commit to sounds. Like I'm like, this is what I want, you know? And if I want to tweak it or get it out of the way of the vocals or get it out of the way of the kick drum or something like that, then I could just do that with an EQ, or I can, you know, oh, I want to compress it a little harder. Cool, just add it to this, you know? And this is sending also to an EMT reverb. Looks like we're at like 3 seconds or so. And a Q3, which is ducking like the mid-range kind of vocal area and getting rid of like, I find plates always have like too much low end in them when you send to plate reverbs, especially this 140 and the 250. Okay, so let's listen to this lead here.
She's giving that attitude, slow and low.
So yeah, a huge part of the record, right? Like this was something I thought really hard about keeping or taking out of the record. But every time I took it out, I missed it. I tried to do that with guitars, like, and it just sounded like way too, I don't know, it just wasn't right, you know? So I really like this. I just left it in. I think that's the Prophet as well. And then, of course, this is the Prophet, you know, and then this has Pro Q on it, ducking some of that. 298. This Nicky Romero, real just basic plugin for like pumping. I'm at like 55% just to give it a pulse. And then I have the retro RC20, always finds its way, you know, somewhere in a session of mine. You know, I'm sure everybody uses this plugin by now. I got, yeah, just a little more width. Got some reverb, the magnetic up, and I'm getting rid of like low end and doesn't look like much top end. And then the Super VHS, which is one of my, you know, go-tos for just a little vibe. Like I'll turn up this heat knob a little bit and sometimes the wash and the drift, right? And then sometimes if I'm feeling really crazy, I'll hit that magic button, but usually not. It just gets too out of tune. I don't really like it. One thing you can do though with the Baby Audio plugins, which I figured out a while back, was you can go to the magic switch alone, turn it on, and then you have just a mix knob, a mix like blend of the magic switch, which that's what I recommend if you're trying to do that like wavy, like detuning, rather than doing it in the Super VHS. But anyway, I digress. Let's hear this guy.
She's giving that attitude, slow and low.
Yo, the Prophet doing what the Prophet does best, right? Like just those warm analog pads and that low, that just kind of mid-range, like lower mid-range, like just that feel, you know? If you take that out, like the record falls apart. It's not glued, you know? And then the Prophet brass, you know, another thing that I just absolutely love. Prophet brass is one of the best things in the world. Makes me so happy. Got rid of everything up to 200. Looks like I even ducked more of 293 and then pushed a little mid-range and woo, look at that. I went crazy there. And then lustrous plate, good one. Really heavy though, heavy plugin. I do like this though. It's a great plate. And then I put Arvox on it, which probably just like mellowing it out and just holding it together like crazy. And then after the Arvox, I did even more EQing. So, you know, plugins add stuff, add harmonics and stuff, especially like plate reverbs and all that. So I just did everything directly on there as an insert, and that's just going directly to the master bus. So let's hear this.
Pulling in my heart, the waiting is so hard, stolen.
But yeah, that is just literally like helping give that bell lead some vibe. So if you put these together, this is kind of what I got. So the big idea with these synths is really to give this record a little bit more depth and complexity, beyond just like, oh, here's a band with some horns and, you know, bass and drums and all this stuff, and a vocalist on it. Like, I wanted to have some like kind of old school flavors and old school vibes. I wanted the record to sound like it was giving a nod to the 80s, you know, like not necessarily like the early 80s, but, you know, it's just like it's like a cross genre hybrid of everything, you know. It's just, I think that's typically what happens when you make records. You just kind of, you find your influences and the things you like, and when you make music, you're like, oh, what if we did this, and what if we did that, and then what if you added live horns, you know? And that's just kind of what got me excited about the record. That's about it for the synths. Next module, I'll show you guys a breakdown of the guitars, because there's a lot of guitars in here as well. And then we'll get into the live brass, because there's flugelhorn and trumpet and just a bunch of different brass, and that was really, really fun to do. And then we can get into the vocals, right? So stay tuned, keep watching these series. I think you'll really like them. I think you get a lot out of them, you know, if you're making your own records. And if you click the link in the description, you can also pick up my my courses on mixing, mastering, producing, all that stuff. I have a Logic song creation formula, which I highly believe in. I made, you know, a whole record through it and show you exactly what I do step by step, rather than breaking down something I already made. So I think that'll be really helpful for you if you're looking to learn more about producing, mixing, mastering, all that good stuff. Also, you can also click the link in there to watch the first video, which breaks down the drums, right? And the drums were, they were a lot of fun. And it's a cool little like look into the EQs and the compression and all that stuff. And then I'll get into also breaking down the master bus and the different buses and how I kind of glue things together and build up the track and mix as I go and all that stuff. But thank you so much for tuning in. Share this with a friend if you like it. Give it a like, comment, you know. Love to hear your thoughts on what I'm doing or any questions you have about the synths I'm using, the bass player, the drums, whatever. All right. See ya.